My parents cornered me, took my savings, and threatened to take my child. They left me with nothing but a restraining order and a broken spirit. They thought they had won, but they forgot one thing. A person with nothing left to lose is dangerous. My name is Ava Chen, and I am the architect of my father's ruin. The main auditorium in Palo Alto was electric, packed with over 5,000 investors, journalists, and tech acolytes, all hanging on every word spoken by Marcus Thornton, the celebrated CEO of Thornton Dynamics. My father. He stood on that stage, a titan in a bespoke suit, speaking of legacy and innovation. He had no idea his own legacy was about to be rewritten in real time. As he prepared to unveil his latest product, the massive screens behind him flickered, not with a sleek new gadget, but with a cascade of encrypted emails, hidden ledgers, and offshore account numbers. Then, in the center of the chaos, my face appeared on screen, recorded just an hour before in a stark, empty room. My voice, cold and steady, echoed through the stunned silence. "My father speaks of legacy," I began. "Today, I will show you his true legacy. One built on deceit and the ashes of those he betrayed. This is not a product launch, it is a reckoning." The auditorium erupted. Cameras flashed, people shouted, but all I saw was my father's face, frozen in a mask of pure disbelief and horror. This wasn't just a corporate takedown. This was the final, explosive chapter of one of those devastating family revenge stories you hear about. But this one was mine to tell. They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes the only way to cleanse a poisoned bloodline is with fire. If you've ever been pushed to the absolute brink by the very people who were supposed to protect you, do me a favor and hit that like button. It tells the world that stories like ours deserve to be heard. But to understand that moment of absolute destruction, you have to understand the prison that built it. It wasn't a prison of steel bars, but one of glass walls and meticulously manicured lawns in Palo Alto. Growing up as the daughter of Marcus Thornton meant living in a gilded cage at the very heart of Silicon Valley. Our home, a sprawling 15,000 square foot minimalist masterpiece, felt less like a house and more like a corporate headquarters where I was the star intern. I wasn't raised to be a person, I was cultivated to be an asset, a future CEO, the flawless heir to the Thornton Dynamics throne. My path was never my own. It was a strategic roadmap drafted by my father. Stanford for my undergraduate degree in data science, a summer internship in our Zurich office, and eventually a key position back at headquarters, where I would be groomed to take over. Even my friendships were vetted by my mother, Catherine, ensuring I only associated with the children of other tech giants or venture capitalists. I had everything money could buy: the latest tech, a new Tesla for my 16th birthday, a wardrobe that could rival a runway model's. But I owned nothing, least of all myself. My life was a business plan, and I was its primary, most valuable product. It's a uniquely suffocating feeling, being valued for what you can become, not for who you are. My entire world was a carefully constructed stage, and I was just playing the part my family had written for me. If you've ever felt like your life was a performance for your family's benefit, I want you to do something. Just type the name of the city you're watching from in the comments below. Let's see how far this silent army of misunderstood souls truly stretches. A gilded cage is still a cage, and for 26 years, I never even rattled the bars. I simply accepted my fate. But every perfectly sealed system has a vulnerability. My vulnerability, my beautiful, world-shattering vulnerability, was named Liam O'Connell. I didn't meet him at a sterile tech gala or a venture capital luncheon my mother had arranged. I met him at a community center in East San Jose, where he was volunteering his weekends, teaching digital privacy skills to at-risk teenagers. He was a cybersecurity genius, the kind of elite talent my father would have paid a fortune to acquire. But he was using his gifts to protect ordinary people, not to build corporate empires. He saw the world in binary, but his code was one of ethics. There was right, and there was what companies like Thornton Dynamics did. Liam had turned down six-figure offers from the biggest names in the valley because he refused to work on projects he believed were morally compromised. He was fiercely intelligent, unapologetically principled, and when he looked at me, he didn't see Ava Chen, the heiress. He saw Ava, the data scientist who geeked out over elegant algorithms. With him, our conversations weren't about market caps or quarterly earnings. We talked about vintage sci-fi novels, the ethics of AI, and his dream of starting a nonprofit cybersecurity firm for activists and journalists. He was the first person who wasn't impressed by my last name. In fact, I think he felt sorry for me because of it. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly seen. I felt real. And that made me the most dangerous thing imaginable in my father's meticulously controlled world, a person with her own heart. Introducing Liam to my parents wasn't a meeting, it was an evaluation. He sat in our sterile, all-white living room, a space that cost more than his entire childhood home, and answered my father's questions with a quiet dignity that seemed to infuriate Marcus more than any argument could. My father didn't raise his voice. He never did. Instead, he smiled a thin, bloodless smile after Liam explained his work. A cybersecurity expert with a conscience, my father mused, his voice dripping with condescension. How novel. That was it. No shouting match, no overt disapproval. Just a quiet, terrifying judgment. I knew in that moment that a verdict had been passed, and a sentence was coming. A week later, the first shot was fired. Liam was called into his director's office at the prominent cybersecurity firm where he was a lead analyst. The director, a man who had praised Liam's work just days before, couldn't even make eye contact. He mumbled a vague excuse about corporate restructuring and eliminating redundant roles. It was a transparent lie. I knew instantly. My father had made a single phone call, not as a concerned parent, but as the CEO of Thornton Dynamics, a king calling in a favor from a lesser lord. He had painted Liam as a risk, a liability, and had him surgically removed from his career. Liam came to my apartment that night, holding a small cardboard box with his belongings, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. The message from my father was brutally clear. Anyone attached to me who didn't fit his grand design would be erased. And seeing the injustice in his eyes, it lit a fire in me. Let me know in the comments, have you ever had to become a warrior to defend someone you love from an unfair attack? Just type "I fight" if you know that feeling. I thought getting him fired was the lowest my father could sink. I was naive. That wasn't the attack, it was merely the warning shot. The real assault was yet to come, and it was far more diabolical, a plan designed not just to separate us, but to destroy Liam completely. 2 weeks later, news erupted across the tech world. A massive, debilitating data breach at a major rival corporation, a direct competitor to Thornton Dynamics. The hack cost them tens of millions in a single night. The very next day, an anonymous source leaked a devastating report to a prominent tech journalist. The report contained a meticulously fabricated digital forensics file, a carefully woven web of lies. It showed IP addresses artfully routed through servers Liam had previously used for freelance projects, fragments of malicious code that mimicked his unique programming style, and doctored communications that painted him as a hacker for hire. The headline was brutal. Disgraced analyst implicated in billion-dollar tech heist. Liam's face was plastered across every tech blog and news site. He went from being an unemployed professional to a pariah, a criminal in the court of public opinion. His phone blew up with messages filled with accusation and disgust. Lawyers for the rival company publicly announced they were cooperating with the FBI in a federal investigation. My father had done more than get him fired. He had framed him for a federal crime. He had painted a target on Liam's back and handed the weapon to the rest of the world. Staring at the screen, the blood drained from my face. I finally understood. My father wasn't trying to protect me, he was trying to cage me. And he was willing to burn an innocent man's life to the ground just to rebuild the bars a little stronger. He wasn't just a controlling father anymore, he was a monster. The digital assassination was just the prelude to the public execution. My mother called, her voice a perfect imitation of heartbreak, insisting we all attend the annual Thornton Foundation charity gala. We needed to present a united front, she'd claimed. It wasn't about unity, it was an ambush, set on the grandest stage possible. The ballroom at the Fairmont San Francisco was glittering, filled with the titans of the tech world. My parents cornered us near the grand staircase, a location that was both private enough for a confrontation and public enough for dozens of their peers to witness the drama unfold. My mother, Catherine, clutched her diamond necklace, her face a mask of practiced sorrow. "Ava, darling," she whispered, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Look at the shame this man has brought upon us. Our family name is being dragged through the mud. How can you continue to stand by him?" Then my father stepped forward, his eyes like chips of ice. He didn't even look at Liam, his chilling gaze was locked on me. "The game is over, Ava," he said, his voice low and final. "You will publicly disavow him and this relationship. Tonight. You will issue a statement, and we will begin damage control. Or you can walk out that door with him. If you do, consider yourself no longer a Thornton. The trust funds, the inheritance, your very name, all of it will be gone. You will have nothing." He finally glanced at Liam with pure contempt. And he already is nothing. He expected me to break, to choose the gilded cage. But looking at his cruel, unforgiving face, and then at Liam, who met my gaze with unwavering trust, the choice had never been more clear. I didn't say a word. I simply took Liam's hand, turned my back on my parents, and walked out of that ballroom, the silent stares of Silicon Valley's elite following us out into the cold night air. The drive down Highway 101 to Liam's small apartment in Mountain View was the quietest car ride of my life. The adrenaline from the confrontation had evaporated, leaving behind a cold, terrifying emptiness. We had walked away from everything. My family, my inheritance, my entire identity. Liam's career was in ashes, and he was facing the threat of a federal investigation. We were completely and utterly alone, adrift in an abyss created by my own blood. I collapsed onto his worn-out couch, the full weight of my parents' cruelty finally crashing down on me. I wept, not for the lost millions or the social status, but for the chilling finality of it all. They hadn't just disowned me, they had tried to annihilate the man I loved just to prove a point. Liam knelt in front of me, and as he wiped away my tears, I saw the grief in his eyes transform into something else. Something hard and sharp as flint. "They think this is over," he said, his voice quiet but vibrating with a cold fury. "They think they can just break us and walk away." Seeing that fire in him ignited my own. The years of suppressed anger, of being the perfect, polished daughter, it all burned away in that moment, leaving behind a core of pure, unadulterated resolve. "You're right," I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. "No more reacting. No more defending. They started a war. Now, we finish it. I know every vulnerability in my father's empire. And you know how to unlock any door he's ever built. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. This was for retribution. It's a strange thing, hitting absolute bottom. There's nothing left to fear. In that emptiness, you find a terrifying kind of freedom. If you've ever hit your lowest point only to find a strength you never knew you possessed, just rise up in the comments. I want to see the army of survivors here tonight. A war, even a digital one, needs an arsenal and allies. Our first move wasn't a direct attack, but a quiet pilgrimage to find the one ghost from my father's past who might still hold a grudge. David Sterling. David was the brilliant engineer who had co-founded the company with my father before being brutally pushed out in a boardroom coup 2 decades ago, cheated out of billions, and erased from the company's history. We found him living a quiet, self-imposed exile in a small house overlooking the ocean in Marin County, surrounded by old computers and the lingering bitterness of a deep betrayal. Initially, he wanted no part of it. "You can't beat him, kid," he said, his voice rough with disuse. "Marcus doesn't play by any rules. He'll bury you." But I didn't appeal to his greed, I appealed to his stolen legacy. "He didn't just steal your company, David," I said, my voice steady. "He's trying to steal my future using the same playbook. I have the insider knowledge of his current operations. Liam has the skill to bypass every defense he's ever built. We can't offer you money, but we can offer you something far more valuable. Justice." For a long moment, he just stared at me, seeing my father's resolve but not his corruption. Then, he gave a slow, deliberate nod. "All right, kid. Let's go to war." That afternoon, he led us to a hidden safe and pulled out a stack of old, encrypted hard drives his insurance policy. It was the genesis of my father's empire, filled with original source code, hushed-up legal disputes, and the names of everyone Marcus had ever wronged. Back at our apartment, Liam transformed our spare bedroom into a digital command center, a web of secure servers and firewalls. The pieces were finally on the board. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights fueled by cheap coffee and pure adrenaline. Our small apartment became a war room, its walls plastered with network diagrams, financial charts, and timelines of my father's life. David's old hard drives were a cryptic map to a buried kingdom, and Liam was the master codebreaker, working tirelessly to unlock secrets that were 20 years old. My role was to be the translator, connecting the ghosts of my father's past to the realities of his present-day empire. I knew his strategies, his key players, his financial structures. As Liam decrypted each file, I pieced the puzzle together, recognizing names and project codes that were still whispered in the hallways of Thornton Dynamics. And then, at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, we found it. The Rosetta Stone. The absolute, undeniable smoking gun. Tucked away in a mislabeled folder on a long-forgotten server backup was the original, uncompiled source code for Prometheus, the foundational AI platform that had made my father a billionaire. The timestamps and digital signatures were irrefutable. It wasn't co-developed, it was written entirely, line by line, by David Sterling. My father hadn't just pushed his partner out, he had stolen the very soul of the company and built a fraudulent legacy around it. The irony was so thick I could taste it. The exact crime he had framed Liam for, intellectual property theft, was the cornerstone of his entire empire. The path forward became brutally clear. We wouldn't leak this to a journalist. We would deliver the verdict ourselves, on the day my father felt most invincible. The annual product launch. And in that moment, seeing the plan lock into place, I felt a surge of power. It was the feeling of seeing the final move in a chess game. If you have ever had that crystal-clear moment where you knew exactly how to claim your justice, type checkmate in the comments. I want to feel that victorious energy with you. On the day of the Thornton Dynamics annual product launch, Silicon Valley held its breath, expecting to witness the future. From our apartment, we held our breath too, but for a very different reason. The world saw a stage, a confident CEO, and a promise of innovation. We saw a digital battlefield, and our missile was ready. Marcus strode onto the stage, bathed in spotlights, the very picture of a visionary leader. He began his keynote, speaking of trust, transparency, and building a better tomorrow. The hypocrisy was so thick, it was almost suffocating. In our small command center, Liam looked at me and gave a single, determined nod. I took a deep breath and clicked, execute. It was instantaneous. A digital coup. One moment, my father's smiling face was on the 50-foot screen behind him. The next, it was a split screen. On one side, David Sterling's original, time-stamped source code from 1998. On the other, the supposedly proprietary code of the company's foundational AI. They were identical. Then came the deluge. Offshore bank records detailing financial fraud, audio clips of my father arranging the smear campaign against Liam, internal memos detailing the cover-up of the IP theft. We hadn't just hijacked his presentation, we had hijacked his entire reality and broadcast it to every investor, every journalist, and every live stream viewer across the globe. My recorded message, the one from the beginning of this story, was the final blow. I watched my father's face on our monitor. The confident smirk faltered, his face slackening with confusion, then twisting in pure panic as he realized what was happening. He was trapped on his own stage, a king being dethroned in his own court, with the evidence of his treachery illuminated for the world to see. His empire was turning to ash around him. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. It wasn't a slow decline, it was a free fall from a skyscraper. In the 24 hours that followed our broadcast, Thornton Dynamics stock became utterly worthless as trading was halted indefinitely. The SEC froze all of my father's personal and corporate assets. The FBI raided the corporate headquarters in Palo Alto, carrying out boxes of evidence for the entire world to see. Marcus Thornton went from a celebrated titan to a disgraced pariah overnight, his face on the cover of every financial magazine for all the wrong reasons. My mother, Catherine, became a social ghost, shunned by the very community she had spent her life cultivating. They had built an empire of lies, and it vanished like smoke in the wind. In the midst of the chaos, Liam was publicly and completely exonerated. The truth, revealed so dramatically, was undeniable. He was flooded with job offers, not from corporations trying to buy his talent, but from global human rights organizations and investigative journalism outlets who needed his skills to hold power accountable. The world finally saw him as I always had, a hero. And us? We didn't take a dime of the money that would eventually be untangled in the legal battles. A month later, on a windswept stretch of beach in Santa Cruz, we finally had our wedding. There were no caterers, no orchestras, no guest list of 300. It was just us, David Sterling, and a handful of friends who had stood with us in the storm. As I said my vows to Liam, with the sound of the Pacific Ocean crashing behind us, I felt a profound peace I had never known. We had burned down a corrupt kingdom, and from the ashes, we were building a small, quiet, and incredibly beautiful life. It was a victory that no amount of money could ever buy. Looking back on it all now, I've thought a lot about the nature of what we did. On the surface, this is a classic family revenge story, the kind that seems like something out of a movie. But the truth is, it was never just about revenge. Revenge, I've learned, isn't about the satisfaction of destruction, it's about the necessity of deconstruction. It's about taking a sledgehammer to a foundation that was built to trap you, so you finally have clear ground to build something true, something that is entirely your own. It's about reclaiming the narrative of your own life and refusing to let someone else's toxic legacy define your future. My father wanted his legacy to be an empire of steel and code. Instead, his legacy became a cautionary tale. The greatest lesson I learned through the fire is this. Sometimes, to build the future you deserve, you must find the courage to burn down the prisons others have built around you. A true legacy isn't what's handed down to you, it's what you build yourself, with your own two hands, from the ashes of what came before. You are the architect of your own soul. You get to choose the materials. You get to draw the blueprints. Thank you for being here with me, for listening to my story. I wanted to share it because I know, somewhere out there, someone else is standing on the edge of their own battle, wondering if they have the strength to fight. You do. If you believe in the power of forging your own path, even if it means standing against the world to do it, then this is your home. Subscribe and join a community that understands that the most painful endings are often the catalysts for the most beautiful beginnings. Your story matters here.